much easier to act your way into a new way of thinking and feeling versus thinking or feeling your way into a new way of acting, right? Actions will help you to feel differently.
I think you and I both might be on the bumpy train through the holidays right now. What do you think?
Yes, a bumpy train of sickness, of
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
man, can't get through it. I think today it might be good to kind of discuss some of like what we're kind of running into here because it can be helpful to understand like just because we're coaching people day in and day out on health and fitness, it doesn't mean we don't sit here and struggle too. We struggle with the same stuff, guaranteed. And in fact, it's because we struggle that we can help you maybe struggle less. So Adam, you were telling me before we started recording here, you're on the struggle bus. Talk to me, my friend. What's going on?
yeah. My oldest has been home from school for the last 3 days. He hasn't been feeling well. I feel like I'm getting a tickle in my throat, not feeling 100% at all. One of the things I remind myself is that even warriors need to rest. It's really, really hard for me to take a rest day from movement, but I just didn't even, you didn't even have to fight me on it because I just didn't feel like it at all. And I always kind of have this thing of where it's like, if I mentally don't want to exercise, then I'm like, all right, I need to exercise. I should exercise because it's going to make me feel better. But if I physically don't feel like exercising, then I honor that. And for the last few days, I have not felt physically like exercising. And I kind of feel like a slug. I feel like, 4 days ago, I felt invincible. I felt incredible. I felt energized, vibrant, how I always like to feel and try to feel. And today I feel like a slug. I'm like, who cares, right?
Yeah, gosh, same old story, right? Like we kind of let that energy drop and then we start judging it, right? The brain's like, oh yeah, you are a slug. You're a lazy, no good. How dare you take 4 days off because you're sick?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked hard to practice self-compassion, and for me, it's just like physically, I just feel tired. I don't have energy. I feel like a slug, and it's really easy to kind of go down that path of like, all right, well, you know what? Who cares? It's holiday time. Why don't you order in, get some pizzas, or eat those cookies or whatever it is? And again, it's not that we can't ever eat them, but I like to be intentional about it. And the point I guess I'm trying to make here is it's very motivation and momentum is a very, very fine line, right? One day you can feel like you're on top of the world. The next day you feel like you're a slug. And I think it's important to remember, and perhaps this is more a reminder for myself as well, that it can easily switch either way very quickly, right? And I think that's a wonderful thing, but it also goes to show us that fitness and health is a decision we get to make every single day, right? And yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I was actually going to ask you, okay, so this is good because I'm also under the weather. I'm sure plenty of you out there are because 'tis the season. And if you have kids, well, good luck. But okay, so like, right, we're struggling for the exercise piece when when your body is down and out, it's really trying to heal, it's trying to fight off whatever crud you've got going on. And you mentioned like, right, like it's easy to just slip off into that like no momentum land. But we also talk a lot about like a quick turnaround, a quick recovery, but like physically we don't feel it. So what is one lever you can pull to remind yourself like, listen, I don't have to go all in on this no momentum land. Like what one lever would you pull instead to remind yourself like I can help myself through this time?
Well, I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist. And, the old me back in the day would be like, well, I didn't exercise. Well, screw it. I'm not eating nutritiously either. Right. And it becomes this double whammy. So one of the things I've been trying to focus on, and it's really, really uncomfortable for me, is to still eat the way I want to eat, right? To still eat intentionally and nutritiously, so I feel good about it. So that's one lever I've been really trying to hang on there, is because it's so tempting. There's a big part of me that wants to just say, screw it, start fresh. Once you start exercising, then you'll go all back in. But I know that is not the answer, right? Because we got to figure out and focus on what we can do. despite all the things that we might not feel like we're unable to do right now.
I love it. So something that I did yesterday, I was feeling totally crummy and I caught myself in the kitchen going, what can I eat? What can I eat to make me feel better? And
Yeah.
I had just like eaten lunch not that long before. And I was like, you know what? Nothing sounds good because it's not going to fix this not feeling good. And I'm in a place where I can't really exercise very intensely at all. So I'm with you. I laid down on the couch in the middle of the day. I just said, you know what? Just throw that blanket over you and lay down, even if it's just 10 minutes. And it helped. It kind of gave me a reset. And it's that sort of thing is really uncomfortable for me to do, especially given like the myriad of things we've got to get done in a day. How dare I lay down for 10 minutes and rest my body? So for me, that was a real vote in the right direction, right?
Love that. Yeah. And as I always say, it is never about the food. It is what about what the food allows us to avoid and or the void it fills. And I hear you.
Yeah.
I've had those moments the last few days too, where it's like, what can I eat right now? Even though I know I'm not physically hungry, but I know also it's not going to make me feel the way I truly want to feel.
Yeah. It doesn't fix anything. And then you're just left with more no momentum and then some bad feelings on
Yeah.
top of it.
So if I had to sum up this one kind of lesson here for everyone, including myself, it would be the more we get comfortable sticking with it, whatever you want it to mean, while being less than perfect, the better off you'll be, right? We have to get comfortable sticking with it while being less than perfect, right? And for me, as a recovering perfectionist, perfect to me means exercising intensely, eating nutritiously, being very intentional, right? But right now, I can't exercise the way I want to exercise. And it's so tempting to kind of go down that path of, all right, well, screw it. But I'm practicing, and it is practice. And remember, practice is uncomfortable, right? There's, good times, there's bad times, there's times where you feel like you're a master, and there's times where you feel like you're just starting. But if you practice enough, then it becomes routine. And if you do the routine long enough, it becomes habitual.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good reminder. And I think it's something to really think about when I bring up what I'm about to bring up what I'm about to bring up. Hello. In terms of practice. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit. Yes, we're still on holiday topics. I think a lot of people, at least a lot of my clients that I'm working with right now, are feeling some trepidation about the holiday events that they're starting to come into, right? Hanukkah starts tomorrow night. Is that correct? And then obviously we have a million holiday parties, and then Christmas here towards the end of the month, and New Year's. And it's just seemingly like one event and challenge after another. And I was talking with a client of mine. She takes her whole family home for the holidays, and they plant themselves in her parents' house for 2 weeks. And she's like, I feel so overwhelmed. I know what it's going to be like. She sent me videos of these beautiful gourmet cupcakes that her family brings in and sets on the table in the kitchen, bags of chips piled high in every corner. I mean, literally, like it's staring into the beast's cave when she goes home, and she's just there. And, I feel for her, and I feel for those clients who really, there's this old story that they've got to get themselves together for to face over and over again every holiday. But really put it in the perspective of practice, right? Like practice trying something new this year because, okay, the good news is if you're watching this video or you happen to be listening to us via podcast, chances are you're changed. Just listening to us, there's some stuff changing in your head. If you're working with one of our fantastic coaches, you're changed. You're already different this year. So let's talk, Adam, a little bit about what you might suggest to somebody who's got to go home and face, dozens of gourmet cupcakes on the table, bags of chips, cookies, different things like that, and really nothing else to do in the day. What would you recommend? Where do you start?
I think setting boundaries is important. Boundaries for yourself is really important in terms of what you want, what is worth it. I think if you're going home and, someone's making their famous cookies or someone's bringing home, your favorite cupcakes or whatever it might be, like just really pick and choose what, where, and when is worthwhile. And I think going into it and saying, here's what I want to eat, and starting with that versus saying, here's what I can eat, like start with what you want to do and then try to fill in backwards. Because I think if you start with your non-negotiables, it becomes a lot easier to say, all right, but there's a lot of meals and snacks in between those kind of main events where you can be intentional about what you eat, where you can choose nutritious food that's going to make you feel the way you really want to feel.
Good. Yeah. It's a really, I mean, eat anything you want, right? Eat anything you want, but protect yourself with healthy boundaries. I mean, this is that relationship work I always talk about. Like any healthy relationship with food, with your body, with another human being, with activities you choose is going to have boundaries, right? So I love that approach. One thing I ask my client to just try and drill down here, like, is going home and spending 2 weeks with your family about the food? Is it about the food on the table, the food in the pantry, the food everybody's constantly eating? Is that why you're going home? And she was, well, no, we go home because we have limited time together. I get limited days in this life with these people. I get limited time where I have no obligations. She literally can't work while she's there.
Right.
Well, I guess she could. She could probably take her computer. If you're listening, I hope you don't take your computer. Anyway, but point being was she realized going home was about spending time with these people and rest, right? Rest, recovering, restoring. It's a havening, it's a burrowing, it's a hibernation, right?
Yeah.
She didn't mention food. It wasn't, oh, Aunt Smokey's famous cherry cordial dump cake. I don't even know if that's a thing. But none of that came up. And I was like, okay, so anytime your brain wanders to food, and a lot of us get caught in the cycle of fixation, right? Like we're thinking about food, like what am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? And it's like, well, wait a minute. What am I distracting myself from? And listen, being bored, being unoccupied, man, that is really uncomfortable for a lot of us. And doesn't it feel so good to fixate on food? Doesn't it feel so good to pop snacks in your mouth and to realize you don't have to deal with being bored or unoccupied or, God forbid, and I say this because I have felt this, figuring out what to do with the people in your life. How do you spend time with them and not totally feel uncomfortable? It's a lot of time one-on-one with people over the holidays. So what are your thoughts about that,
So
Adam?
true. I don't know. It's kind of reminds me of, it's like, you have someone, you ask someone to do like 10 minutes of exercise. If they don't have time for it, it's like, all right, you need to do an hour of exercise. It's like, in this manner, it's kind of like, if it can't be, it's not really about the food, it's about the people. I don't know if that's all that similar actually, but if it can't be about the people, or it should be about the people, right? And if you find yourself, looking to distract yourself, then that should tell you something. And I think for a lot of us, it's really, really hard to sit still. It's really hard to do nothing. And it's like, let that be, and I know this is hokey and whatever, but let that be your teacher. Sometimes you do need to slow down to speed up, right? So you can hit the ground running in January, work-wise, et cetera. And I know for a lot of us, it's hard to shut down.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Food definitely, no doubt, it is a coping mechanism. It helps us avoid a lot of things.
It does. So here's another question since you bring that up. Something else I've been talking with clients with, in particular regarding the holidays, whether it's events or full-on 2 weeks with your family, whatever. But why abandon the routine practices that keep you feeling good during these times? If we're talking food as a coping mechanism, what are you coping with? Like, what is so horrible about time off from work that you feel you need to cope with food? And some people might be thinking, well, I'm doing it in celebration. Okay, that's great. Boundaries. Because otherwise it doesn't feel like celebration on the other side, right? So it's just some food for thought, right? Like if we're going away, why do we need to cope with time off or time with our loved ones or downtime or fun time? Like, I don't know. It's just an interesting thing that crossed my mind when you said coping with food. And I was like, yeah, but this is joyful. This is enjoyable. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I love what you said also in the beginning of that. It's just like, why abandon the things that, excuse me, Why abandon the
Awesome.
things that make you feel that your best, right? You've talked about this in with tethers, right? We all
Mm,
have things that make us feel our best, and just because we're going somewhere else does not mean we have to abandon those. And yes, what you're asking is definitely a deeper question, and perhaps you don't want to deal with that deep question right now. So I would say,
mm,
at the very least, focus on what makes you feel good. Focus on whether it's some sort of movement, some sort of journaling, some sort of reading, whatever it might be that enables you to be the best version of yourself. You could still do that in a different form, of course, when you're away, but don't abandon it. And
yeah.
then, to kind of, I think, maybe go full circle here. If you feel like you're kind of going down that path, you're on that path of, like, a state of momentum versus, like, maybe a week ago you felt like you had all this momentum and right now you feel like you're in a state of inertia. Remember, you can change it very quickly, right? A little walk or a healthy choice or a nutritious choice or whatever it might be, like, you can change how you feel very quickly, right? And it's much easier to act your way into a new way of thinking and feeling versus thinking or feeling your way into a new way of acting, right? Actions will help you to feel differently. But again, I know it's tricky when you're in that state of inertia.
It is. But I mean, not to toot our own horn, but that's why having a coach in your corner can be invaluable. You need somebody who's got eyes on it and who can remind you that it's within you to just turn it right around. Just take one small step, one small step. And we know you can, like I think about how crucial it's been to have somebody in my corner throughout the years to say, like, oh no, you got this. It's okay. You messed up. You hit a bump. You were headed in the wrong direction. It's one choice right now. So anyway, a little plug for us.
No, no doubt. I mean, listen, I'm, I believe in what we do more than anything, and there's no shame in talking about that. But yeah, I'm excited for you guys for this holiday season. I'm excited for us. But let's not forget what got us to where we are, and let's not forget about the practice of being uncomfortable. Right. Another example, quick example is just like this feeling that starts to come up in December of, like, I'll wait until the new year. Right. And that really is just this feeling of resistance, right? This feeling of waiting for the perfect time, whatever it might be. And that feeling is always going to be there. Like, we're always going to have some sort of resistance. And the more you can kind of embrace that and say, you know what, I'm going to feel it anyway and do it, that's helpful too. And I think it's very easy to feel that, especially when you're away or, you're on holiday or whatever it might be, and you're around all this food and you feel like a slug. It's very easy to say, all right, I'll start fresh, but don't let that feeling win. It's just a feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need those skills, right? Like we're missing out on an opportunity to learn how to navigate those periods of time better and better and better, right? If we're always just putting it off until, like you say, it's sunny and 70, well, we've never figured out how to do anything but sunny and 70. And those days are few and far between in reality.
Totally.
All right, Adam, anything else?
I think that's it. Hopefully you feel better. Hopefully I feel better. And,
I know.
you'll, listen, even warriors need to rest. And I remind myself, every choice, I'm going to focus on what I can control the controllables. And we'll be back to where we want to be soon enough.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully, all of you out there listening and tuning in are feeling pretty good. We're making our way into December. Keep your head up. Do what you can. You can turn it all around in one action. Don't forget that. All right, Adam, be well. And guys, we will see you again next time.